All we need is hope, and for that we have each other. Yeah. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other. I'm not going to go in my whole thing about hope. If you know me, I have some feelings about the word hope, but I'm willing to accept hope in this instance. Because hope for me, yes, it is better than despair. But for me, hope is an acknowledgement that we can live life having only positive expectations. There's the acronym for hope. Having only positive expectations. And we don't ever need to relegate ourselves to despair. We don't need to see it as an unconscious compromise with faith. We can be on the path of acknowledging that in hope we have each other. And that's what this idea of inclusivity is all about. Today, last Sunday, I was not here. I don't know if you know that. And actually, I do want to say, let me thank you. Thank you to Sherry Hoffman and to Joyce Hawley and everyone who made last week's service so spectacular. So grateful. I did watch from my hotel room in Kansas City late in the evening when I finally arrived there. But I went to Unity Village last week. If you are not familiar with Unity Village, we jokingly call it the Mecca of New Thought because it's where a lot of New Thought communities find themselves looking toward, and it's a really spectacularly spiritual, wonderful place. And when I have opportunities to travel to Unity Village for events that they're having there, boy, I jump on those opportunities. I love being there. So I flew to Kansas City last week, and occasionally what happens when I'm sitting in the airport is I will scroll through social media, TikTok, things like that. And there was a word that came across my social media that struck me, and I started thinking about this word and about what the deeper meaning of this word could be in a spiritual sense, and that word was alchemy. Alchemy. And so, unlike me, I sent a message very early in the week to let Tyler know what the title of my talk was. He's usually having to drag it out of me to get the email to send out. And I said, the talk this week is going to be called The Alchemy of Inclusivity. The alchemy of inclusivity. Now, traditionally, alchemy, the word, if you remember from your study in school, I think I learned this in junior high or high school, was it's medieval in origin, and it is the art of transmuting metals, specifically turning lead into gold. This was a precursor to the ideas of chemistry. What they found is you can't actually do that. Doesn't work that way. But as I started thinking about the notion of alchemy in a spiritual sense, in the sense beyond the physical form, I started to think about this, that we have leaden ideas that we live with a lot. Those lead-like ideas, L-E-A-D, those lead-like ideas are usually rooted in this notion that we are somehow separate from the infinite, that we are separate from God, that we have separations from the paths of good that exist and are ever present, whether we are aware of them or not. And the gold idea is that we find a healing of that separation when we realize that we are all connected and that cooperation is the preferred way of interaction. For me, that's the alchemy of inclusivity. And we are, each and every one of us, making decisions in every moment that are either supporting, turning those leaden ideas into gold, or we are not. But we are the ones who get to decide. We are the ones who get to decide. All we need is hope. And for that, we have each other. Brene Brown, actually, so I said Brene Brown, now you're expecting, there's a quote. There is a quote that she offered. It's not a novel idea, though, and she actually has borrowed this from Well, it's been attributed to Franklin Roosevelt, actually Teddy Roosevelt, one of the Roosevelt presidents. I don't remember which now. It's also been attributed to Mark Twain, but she offered this: comparison is the thief of happiness. Comparison is the thief of happiness. The notion of comparison is a separating idea. It is an idea that says, I am separate from you, and if I am comparing myself to you, usually what that is born out of is some level of victim consciousness that says, I am less than you, and so I will compare myself to you because I would like to rise up to be like you. Comparison is the thief of happiness. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I think it is time once and for all that we let go of the notions of comparison. And my experience in ministry, my experience of ministry in the, I was first licensed as a minister in 2011. So I've been a licensed minister in various ways for 13 years. And I've gone to a lot of conferences. I was at a conference last week, and there was some notion of separation in the languaging of these conferences that would drive me up a wall. It drove me crazy because I would go to conferences and I would hear ministers get up and they would go, and ministers who like to stand behind the lectern. I don't. But ministers who would get up there, they would stand behind the lectern and they would say, we have the best spiritual teaching in the world. We have the best spiritual teaching in the world. And I disagree, which surprises some people sometimes. We have a spiritual teaching. I have found that spiritual teaching works for me. But I spend a lot of time inviting people to question the teaching, which is why I start every single week by saying, you may not believe everything I say. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. But I will offer the tenets of the teaching. I will endeavor to inspire and educate you into the teaching so that you can decide what you are going to do with it. Because every time a minister would say, we have the best spiritual teaching in the world, my only thought was, really? Do we? Because that's a pretty limited idea. It's a pretty limited idea. We are part of a worldwide movement. Did you know that? I feel like sometimes we find ourselves in our spiritual communities, our local spiritual communities, and we feel, because a lot of us came to these local spiritual communities feeling separate from and alone, and you find yourself sitting and don't anyone look back just in case this is happening for someone right now, but you find yourself sitting in the back. This is your first time you've been here, and you're hearing a message and you're saying, I resonate with that message so profoundly, and then you're in tears. This was my experience. I was in tears. So like, oh, these are my people. And I didn't know that it was a worldwide spiritual movement I felt separate from. And oftentimes when I'm in community beyond these walls, I'm asked the question, because it inevitably comes up. It happened last night when I was at a friend's house and I met some new people, and it comes up, oh, this is our friend, he's a minister. Really, where do you serve in ministry? At Unity of Tucson. What is unity? Is that Unitarianism? No, it's not. Because the joke is we are the best kept secret in the world, and I refuse to allow that to be the consciousness from which we operate any longer. Let us not be a secret anymore. The question always comes up, what is unity? What is new thought? What is it? I don't understand, because I was taught that ministers in my spiritual upbringing, in my church experience, were always up there preaching an idea that I was separate from God and that I could only attain enlightenment, or whatever I choose to call it, by allowing myself to come into expression of my divinity. Starting to sound familiar? By acknowledging and accepting something out there as making me worthy. You do not need to be made worthy. You are worthy just because you exist. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. And you are here. Practicality for me is at the root of New Thought, the New Thought tradition, which is teaching God is all there is, and that is who and what you are. in the same way that the mystics of the ages have all taught, God is what is all there is, and that is who and what you are. There is no separation. We teach the tenets of prayer by beginning with, God is, I am. And if there was no other prayer to be offered, spoken out loud, if we embodied those ideas profoundly so that there was no doubt in our mind whatsoever that that was the truth of our being, everything would flow forth with ease and grace. We'd never have to worry about a thing. That's why that third aspect of our mission statement, remember who you are, for me is one of the most important aspects of the mission of this spiritual community. Remember who you are. You are God. The wholeness of you is divine. The wholeness of you is this magnificent creative source. The wholeness of you is an outflow of the quantum field, letting itself be known as the expression of you. Doesn't matter the words you use because it is beyond language. Every time we try to use words to describe it, we are limiting the idea, and it is an idea that is unlimited, and there's no way for us to actually truly understand the nature of the infinite divine. But boy, I'm trying. So last week I went to a conference at Unity Village, a conference of a loose association, which I'm grateful for, because there is no governing authority that says, this is what you must do, this is how you must be. The organization that I was at conference with is the Affiliated New Thought Network. It's just over 30 years old as an organization, and it is inviting us all to work together, to be in cooperation, and to stop being in competition with each other. When I came through ministerial school, the glasses are coming off a lot today. When I went through ministerial school, there was a tacit, it was not explicit, there was a tacit invitation for ministers to be in competition with one another. And I reject that notion. But part of it was because, well, there was this organization, and then this organization, and then this organization, and this organization didn't get along with this organization, and this organization didn't get along with that organization, but we're all trying to teach the same thing, unity. But we can't get along. Because, well, the approach on this side of the aisle is much better than the approach on this side of the aisle. Well, let's stop that. Let's stop that once and for all. That's what I love about the Affiliated New Thought Network. It is a network. Yes, you can applaud that. It is a network that is a connector for all new thought, formed to uplift, support, inspire, and empower its membership of individuals, spiritual communities, and organizations. I was proudly a member of the Affiliated New Thought Network. I brought that affiliation with me here, and now Unity of Tucson is a part of that affiliated network. Whew. And so it's actually a conference that I love going to. I didn't go last year because I had done the Camino, and I just was trying to, acknowledge that I had been away a lot last year when I was on sabbatical. But I love going to this conference. It's like, it's seeing lots of wonderful friends from every walk of New Thought, from the United Foundation for Better Living, to Agape, to Unity, to religious science, to divine science. All over, we all come together. And I am so grateful for that. We had some acknowledgement from one of the keynote presenters that really invited us into this consciousness of inclusivity. And he reminded us of the 4 stages of consciousness. Now, these stages of consciousness are coined by Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith, if you know who he is, Agape. One of the magnificent organizations under the New Thought umbrella. And he invited us all into an understanding that these stages of consciousness are something that we all go through. And if we are on a spiritual journey, we can open ourselves up to an acknowledgement and awareness of this journey that we are on. And we begin with this stage of consciousness. The first stage of consciousness is this idea, to me. What does that mean? To me. This stage of consciousness is an invitation into this idea. We have no control. We are victims of circumstance. Life happens to me. My problems are because of stuff out there, something out there. I am assuming that because we're all sitting in this room, we have all moved past that particular stage. And even if you think that life still happens because of stuff out there, the very fact that you are in this room is an invitation for you to reconsider that idea. In this moment, you get to make a decision. And so, to me, leads us through to the next step in the stages of consciousness, that life happens by me. By me. I take that power back. That I am learning that I can positively affect my experience. And I find that power in awareness. And through awareness, I make better choices moment by moment by moment by moment in my life. And so we're now into the second stage of consciousness, which we work to embody. Usually that began, well, I can tell you that began for me by walking through the doors of a New Thought community almost 20 years ago and realizing that this was something I could study. So here's the thing about by me. Life happens by me. Oh, it's something I can study. I can study how to make my life better. Sometimes what I ended up with was, I am studying how to manipulate the circumstances of my life to make it better. That happens in by me sometimes. And so we can acknowledge that we are on a progression of evolution and that the third stage of consciousness is this, through me. Life is happening through me. Ooh, those glasses really want to come off. Life is happening through me, and so I'm moving beyond trying to manipulate the circumstances. I call this moving beyond praying for parking spaces. Deepening in surrender to my identity as the one, and it is a continuing journey beyond the intellect. This is when I begin to embody the notion that life is happening through me. Oh, but the ultimate, perhaps, in this stage of awareness is to realize that life is happening as me. That's the fourth stage of consciousness, as me, where we root ourselves in a deep feeling of wholeness, where we root ourselves in a deep feeling of the interconnectedness of all things, where we root ourselves in the deep feeling of unity. We have moved beyond thoughts, we have moved beyond belief, and now we are in the state of feeling tone. And I like to define God as the feeling tone of all creation. So we were invited into remembering that these are the four stages of consciousness as taught by Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith. The keynote speaker suggested that there is a fifth stage. A fifth stage which moves us beyond as me and invites us into this consciousness as we. As we. That this is the deepest awareness of the interconnectedness of all creation. The deepest awareness. And I put deepest in quotes because there's always more in the infinite. There's always more in the infinite. So we are in a constant state of uncovering the deepness of the interconnectedness of all creation. As we calls us to a greater understanding that our sensibility of oneness is plural. That there is multiplicity from unity. Multiplicity in its expression is infinite. And there is, this particular minister offered a scriptural reference for this idea in Genesis 1:26. We're in the creation story in Genesis 1:26. And it is often mistranslated with singular pronouns, but the original Hebrew, if you were to translate it properly from the original Hebrew, God says, "Let us make them in our image." Those are plural ideas. Let us make them in our image. We are the image. We are the expression. We are the wholeness of the divine presence and power that is God. So we are not here to uplift ourselves only. We are called upon to uplift all. Because what good is an understanding, an intellectual understanding of oneness if your neighbor is suffering? None of us walks through this life alone. Even when I was on the Camino, I was not walking that life. Sherry's laughing because I know that I have made the Camino my entire identity. But it was such a profound transformation for me in my life. You're going to hear about it a lot. So there's that. And it became a joke. When I was at Unity Village last week, all my friends were saying, enough with the Camino. But none of us is in this life alone. We are all walking together through this thing called life. When the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet and move mountains. That lyric, ooh, that got me today. Especially that when the silence isn't quiet and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. What happens in those instances where the world seems to be pressing down around you? Can we look to others for the support we seek? Are we willing to go to our spiritual community, our spiritual leaders, and ask them for the support we seek? One of the things I always like to say is, if something's happening in your life that you need spiritual support around, you got to let us know, because I missed the ministerial class on psychism. What? I missed the ministerial class where we were taught to be psychic. I will state it that way. I don't know. I don't know what's happening with you, but you are always welcome to reach out and say, here's what's happening for me. I would like spiritual support in this. That's what I've committed my life to. If we are to move mountains, I believe, you get to decide what you believe, but if we are to move mountains, then we must welcome absolute, unconditional, unapologetic inclusivity as part of our philosophy. Because all of creation is made in the image of divinity. All creation is made in the image of divinity. Let us make them in our image. All creation is made in the image of divinity. So the alchemy of inclusivity, what is that? Lead becomes gold when we support others. Lead becomes gold when we lift up others. Lead becomes gold when we remember who we are and understand that about all people and all creation. Friends in need are friends indeed. Y'all heard that before, right? That traces back to 400 BCE, before the Common Era, from Euripides. Are you willing to step forth and be a friend indeed? Indeed, in action, in the way that you will show up for that person that is in need. A value that I hold very dear is cooperation over competition. Inclusivity invites others to the table and invites us to share our bounty with them. And if we are willing to listen, we are called upon to act as love. We have friends in need. We have friends in need, and I would like to welcome them to our table. This is a way that the leadership of this community is considering turning lead into gold. The Center for Spiritual Living Tucson has been a church-in-a-box organization for a couple decades now. And I have developed a very, very good relationship with the senior minister at Center for Spiritual Living Tucson, Reverend Ronnie. And quite unexpectedly, a conversation started happening, I would say 4 or 5 months ago. That's about right, William? Yeah. And it was just kind of one of those things where, wouldn't it be funny if we did this? And then we started thinking about it. we started thinking about it. And we started thinking, well, what would the implications of this idea be? And how might we implement them in a way that would service the greater spiritual community in all of Tucson? So Center for Spiritual Living has been a church in a box. If you do not know what it is to be church in a box, it means that you load up everything that you need for a Sunday, you go to a location, you set yourself up in your entirety, and at the end, you break it all down, you put it all back in the box, and then you go back over here and you store it away. I have done that enough in my life. I don't want to do that anymore, and I know that they don't want to do that anymore. So we are in negotiations right now. I want to say we are in negotiations right now. There is no agreement yet, but we are in negotiations now to have Center for Spiritual Living Tucson discontinue their church in a box idea, to join us here on this campus to provide them with office space and also to offer them an opportunity to be in this sanctuary on Sundays. That is the alchemy of inclusivity. Now, what it means, I'm just going to give you all fair awareness. That means things for us may change because we're going to have to cooperate. So things may change in the way that Sundays look for us. I don't know what it is exactly yet. We're in that negotiation. But part of the reason I wanted to bring this up today is because if you would like to keep a secret, do not tell anybody in a church environment. It's just people get excited. Oh, did you hear? They're going to be coming up here, and we're going to be, oh gosh, I'm so excited. But I'm not supposed to say anything, so you didn't hear it from me. But I have an awareness that the word has been getting out that we're in these negotiations. So I just wanted to let you all know that we are having negotiations. We're in the conversation about it. It may or may not happen. We're probably going to be coming to a decision pretty soon about how this will work out. And as the plan unfolds and illuminates itself, we, of course, will let you know what that looks like. This is how we collectively rise up. This is the alchemy of inclusivity. I am deeply grateful for you. Peace and blessings. You are magnificent. If you are new to our community, I invite us into the expression of a home practice, I call it. It is a way to take the lessons that we have learned, the inspiration that we feel, and put it into practice in our everyday lives. Because if this philosophy is not practical, then what's the point? That's what I always say. So many of you will have seen this. I do bring this around about once a year as our home practice. The home practice is this: SPARK, which is an acronym that means spiritual practice in acts of random kindness. And so I invite you into acts of random kindness throughout the entire week, and really in your life in general. But at least this week, engage in acts of kindness in unexpected ways. That's the home practice this week. That is a way that we can engage the alchemy of inclusivity and rise up.